for your communities as well, because Indigenous communities are just really gifted with sport, and maybe it's because it's that animalistic approach as well, because I know that that's within you. And you just move different, you're faster, you're more agile, you know, it's just, you move with swiftness. It's different watching an athlete that's First Nations to watching a white Australian athlete.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying there. I'm involved in rugby league myself as well, and I do know that, you know, through rugby league, now that especially in the NRL, that's not obviously in our grassroots and kids levels, but it's 50% is at least Pacific Islander and Aboriginal. So yeah, a massive, you know, group in that space now, and yeah, obviously there's, you know, genetic makeup that changes, that has an impact and influence in regards to Aboriginal people and a lot of other nationalities being able to be in that space. And you know, there is a lot of different. What's really good through a lot of sporting organisations now, we've got the AFL, we've got the soccer, rugby union, rugby league, cricket, a lot of those pathways there. Netball, basketball, we know basketball actually with Paddy Mills leading the way a lot in that way as well. A lot of pathways about going and giving Aboriginal people an opportunity in those spaces to first off use their natural talents to step into those spaces, and then once they've been able to, lucky enough, use their natural talent to step into those spaces, be afforded the opportunity that comes with that as well around, you know, off the back of that, there might be an education, it might be health, it might be, you know, simply financial, which we understand in this world that we live in now, you know, financial is needed. But yeah, I think being recognised as, you know, gifted in our athletic ability is absolutely wonderful. But then we also have the other conversation where rather we don't necessarily also want to be only pigeonholed into athletics, and being given the opportunity to be, you know, acknowledged and recognised in everything that we bring. Yes, definitely being, what's the word around, celebrated for what we're achieving, you know, and how many wonderful athletes have paved the way for us in the past too, and really been able to use their status to drive, you know, awareness in a number of different ways.
And
exactly
to be
right.
a role model as well.
Yeah, massive role models.
Yeah,
all of those sorts of things for sure is massive and such needed. Sometimes we need to see these. Or all the time we need to see these people to you know, give us some belief and inspiration.
Yep.
And then like I'm saying, off the back of that, like similar, like my youngest elder daughter, I say it that way. That's how I describe them all. She's actually really gifted in her athletics too. Like she's come first in her running events and certain things at school. But then on the other flip side too, you know, something that we really drive and for me is so important around is education. And so her education at school is actually, she's really good at as well, and something that we should say is so important that
like she might want to be a scientist
or an inventor, exactly right,
or an artist or a singer or anything.
It could be anything. be anything. So all of that encompassing is wonderful, and so many platforms for that these days too, which is great.
And with the back to the spiritual conversation, you were mentioning about smoke and the significance of that. You know, in my belief system, I'm very I'm like kind of I like to call myself a patchwork quilt. You know, like I don't have one strict belief system. I'm a spiritualist. And I believe in Mother Nature, and I believe that the sun is the life force, and, you know, earth, air, fire, and water are the elements that I work with. But I don't really particularly call myself anything. But earth, air, fire, and water for me are the way that I, they're the elements that Mother Nature provides for all of us, but it provides me to be able to work with her and speak with her. So she speaks to me through those things, and I speak to her through those things, and it's a way that we can communicate. What does earth, air, fire, and water mean for you guys? Like you've already said about the water, so is water mother?
Yeah, so what is part of mother?
Yeah.
Yeah, is another part of mother. So once again, my learnings, I always say my learnings, and I always bring it back to that, is obviously because as Aboriginal people, you mentioned the word hierarchy before, our hierarchy is very different. So a great way that I love an analogy, the way that I've learned is, a lot in Western society, we have a hierarchy of a pyramid where we have one person at the top who's meant to be the knowledge holder of everything, and they generally, unfortunately, in these days cases, is maybe quite sparing or favouritising to who they share the information to. Where in Aboriginal culture, ours is opposite. We have a whole our it's an upside down pyramid. So we've got the baby is the person who's at the bottom,
right,
and everyone above them has to give all of their knowledge, to that baby.
Wow, I love
because
that.
If they do not give if all the elders up there and then the second row of elders and everyone's significant don't filter their information into this baby, the baby all the information is going to die out and disappear.
I love the way that you just explain that, because that's how I've always, so growing up, I was never baptized into any religion. My dad was Catholic but not practicing. My mother was Church of England but not practicing. And I was basically public school, non-scripture, all that kind of stuff. Like pretty much be whatever you want to be, which I'm thankful for in some ways. But in a lot of ways, what I was very hyper aware of was that I missed out on a crucial faith of belonging to something. I always was just in something inside of me, just always felt like that there was something missing, and that I knew I fit somewhere, but I wasn't sure where that was. And I knew it was aligned with faith. And so as I started to grow, I did pretty much what you're describing. I started to realize that I have this connection in the way that I do, where I can see, hear, and feel and know what Spirit's saying, but it doesn't come from one God or one place or one source. It comes from it's like a central intelligence. It's almost just like the divine intelligence, or it is what it is. Like, it's just, I don't know what it is, but I know it's up there, and I know it's outside of me, and I know it's bigger than me, and not better than me, but I know that it is the oneness. And I, in my day-to-day life, will just draw and be guided by all of that is, and I am the opportunity to be the expression of that. So I need to look after my human experience and my environment, because Spirit needs to express itself through me. And that's Tracey's role, is to let all of that express itself through me.
Yeah. So that's why I refer to, I've got lots of teachers.
Yeah, the learning
comes from everywhere. It comes from, like we're saying, mother and father in regards to Biami and earth, but also for me in this modern day and the destruction of our culture, there's lots of teachers for me now as people as well around the Central Coast and other places as well, who I spend time with to learn. So I have to acknowledge obviously all these people and places that I learn from. So I've been told and learned that mother encompasses all nature, all lands, and everything that is. So we've got waterways and ocean and certain things like that. Smoking and smoke is quite important in regards to, once again, spirit. So we will use different types of leaves depending on what the fire is for. So there'll be men's fires and men's leaves and men's trees, and women's fires, women's leaves, women's trees. They'll be used. They'll be used at different times of the day, night, and all the wood and the leaves and everything are chosen specifically depending on what it's going to be for that smoke to do in regards to the spirit, what it needs to do as well. If you use the wrong one, it's going to potentially release the wrong spirit or tell the wrong story or
activate the wrong intention.
All of those sorts of things. So and singing the song, playing the didge or the yadaki, doing the dance, all of these different things around that smoke at that time, once again, contributes to that or adds to that about what that smoke's intention is. what we might see coming from the fire or from the smoke, whether it's to do with our animals, our old people, our the spirits that are coming out of that fire too. So I think what a lot of people in this day and age will sit at a fire and call it, a lot of people have referred to me saying it's hypnotic. Looking at fire, the crackling, the noise, sometimes the sights that we might even see, sort of the signs in the fire. Well, if we think about adding into the true belief of Aboriginal people while they're around that fire and what that fire was for and what that smoke was for, adding into the belief that our song, our dance, and like I said, the choice of the leaf and the wood and everything contribute to true, real sort of movement, signs, guidance, everything from the smoke. So that's how significant, I guess the smoke in particular can be.
So that's fire.
Yeah, that's fire. Fire, smoke, and that's trees, all that sort of stuff.
And wind.
Yeah, wind. Obviously, wind, all that come into that. And then we've got mountains. So I've talked about it, Sacred Mountain before, about being Mount Yango. But once again, you've got floodplains, wetlands, watering holes, but then you've also got mountains, caves. There's just so much. There's
things that I wouldn't
women
even
and
know
men's
to look
business.
At.
There's journeys that men and women's journeys from childhood to mother to fatherhood and motherhood and women's, and there's birthing places. There's every single thing
is marked.
Is marked for some sort of way, like,
and rite of passage.
You can only take a spear from this tree at this time of the season, or
that would have to do with the fact of rejuvenation and also the strength of the spear and what the spear is going to do when you shoot it. It would have so many, it'd be multifaceted.
And I think that's where the spirit comes into it, where, like I was saying, that the animal will tell us, because we are the animal and the animal is us, it will tell us at this time you can come and take my egg for your food. But we also know, because Mother has told us that at the birth of world, the birth of Mother, that we only take what we need, or we only... and that's why the whole fire story sort of debate came in, if we get traditional firemen and firewomen to help do the back burning and stuff like that, because we knew we burn this area, but then we'll travel to this area, and then we'll eventually go back to that area, or that area. So in regards to bringing it back to all that spirit, that's where everything guides us. We are everything. Everything plays such a significant part in our life, either daily, weekly, monthly, yearly.
You just have to be present enough to acknowledge it and recognize it and trust it and move with it.
Yeah. There wasn't even a debate around trust.
Oh.
It is what it is.
It just is what it is. Yeah. And that's so funny, because a lot of people that are going to watch this, they're going to laugh that you just said that, because I say it is what it is, and it's just faith. It is what it is what I usually say. It is what it is.
Yeah.
You can't debate against it, and it's about learning to be in that present moment to see what the is.
Yeah. and as we know, we've got a number of different actual minds,
of course,
within our own body.
Yep.
And that's the same with Aboriginal people. We do say, think from, within, not just from your mind, So we so often would feel something rather than, think something.
Everything that you're saying is kind of giving me goosebumps every now and then, because a few years ago, I had my own experience with an Indigenous elder from the Northern Territory. She's passed away now, unfortunately. She was extremely old. And we just had a phone conversation, and some of the interaction that we had was quite intense. But she said to me that we've been waiting for you. And I was like, okay. I'm just sitting in my room up here, and I was like, okay. And she said, a few years ago, I was with a women's only tribe that was like really in remote area in Uluru, in that kind of area. And we were doing a ceremony, and because the lady that I was reading for, she lived back in town. And the leader of the women's clan, or whatever they were called, she said to her that there would be a lady coming, and that she will speak to you with these words. Like, she will say these words. She will have this message for you. When that lady comes, you need to bring her to us. And I didn't know any of that until after I'd said everything that I'd said. And she just said, so when you come, and at that stage I was coming to the Northern Territory, it was in 2020. And I was going in June for my 40th birthday. And I wanted to experience all there was, because I'm convinced that in my ancestry is Aboriginal DNA. Obviously, we can't test for that. So I've always just had this, it's just something. Don't know what it is. Yeah. And so she just said, when you come, I will take you to them, and they will take you walkabout. And I was just sitting there floored, just going, this is incredible. And I felt so honored and so humbled and so blessed. But it was just this kind of, I didn't want to tell anyone about it, because it felt so deep and sacred, and almost like something from within had spoken to me, but without at the same time. And it was incredible. And so when you say some of the things that you're saying, it, like, so much of it just makes sense to me. And it's like, I've known it all along. And what you're saying, it's just like, maybe this is how I know it.
You asked me the question before about how the community feels in regards to sharing.
Yes.
And I think, unfortunately, I guess they're saying that sometimes some Aboriginal people that I interact with, we say the worst disease that was brought to this continent was not smallpox, was actually greed and ego.
Oh.
So because of the fact around so many Aboriginal communities fighting each other, in my terms, for the scraps of what the government give us, and also for the ego and greed of what status can give to us. Where if we generally are living to our core and to our spirit and to an Aboriginal person, as I said before, our pyramid is the opposite. There was never one person on top. So it was never about being the king or queen or the leader or whatnot. It wasn't about the status. It was about sharing. And you've just shared an example that you've had around a group of Aboriginal people not knowing who you are, and you not being identified as an Aboriginal person, and how important in their culture it was that they've accepted you and can see inside you your connection, your understanding, your
oneness.
Yeah, all of that sort of stuff. So that's what I believe, and that's what the people that I surround myself with believe, that being an Aboriginal person, yes, of course, is about blood.
Yeah.
But it's actually about connection.
Spirit.
So that's
So cool.
Yeah.
So cool.
And we get carried away with that a little bit, I think, sometimes, unfortunately. As a human race as well. Yeah. Not just an Aboriginal people.
Yeah. Well, there's so many different ways of expressing self now, and ego is rife, and you obviously have an ego, everybody does. Yeah. But I, in my travels and my journeying through my life, I went through a phase where I was shown from my learnings that I can detach from it, and it can be outside of me, but it is a part of me, that it has a purpose. It tells me when I'm in danger, and it makes me think about what I need to do, but it is not my driving force. My driving force is inside here. And, I have my hand on my solar plexus all the time, because this is where my spirit will guide me. And literally I feel it, like it moves in or it moves out, or it burns or it goes cold, or it does lots of different things, but I'm centered enough and present enough to be aware of it. And then I usually, it'll be one of two ways. It'll either be that Mother Nature and Spirit have asked me or shown me to seek what it's coming through, or I'll feel it and then I'll surrender it to them to show me what it is that I'm feeling and thinking, if my ego is clouding it. But it's never just a me and an I thing. It is very much an all-encompassing we-ness, which is why I'm pretty much a hermit. So like, I feel that might be something too in terms of Indigenous communities, and I don't want to speak for you, but it must be really difficult in terms of the isolation that you would experience or that you might experience, because other people just don't get it. And it's not that they're being disrespectful or intentionally, they just don't get it. They're just oblivious to it, ignorant, naive, or whatever level they're at. But there's times when it's like, there's no point in me having this conversation.
Oh my goodness.
Because they're not going to hear it. But then there's other times like today where it's like, I feel very blessed and honoured and humbled to have this conversation with you. But I hope that you feel my pure intent.
And no, I do. And that's exactly what you just said there. I have all the time in the world for people with that pure intent and then genuine, that comes with that. There's definitely, and I'll share with you now, like there's, definitely sort of some words and language and stuff like that you have said that is probably try to not say.
Yeah.
But that's fine, because I know that you're being so raw and genuine and everything's, it's great. It's
so
great.
What are those things?
Well, even like, I know you're using examples, but I don't know if this is in your general day-to-day language, but an Aboriginal person is not a half or a quarter or a percentage.
Oh, I don't ever talk
Aboriginal
about that.
person is Aboriginal person. Same with whatever.
Absolutely.
And anyone is, all those sorts of things.
And I think when I said that, it was kind of like back in the 90s, that's how it was. That's how we spoke about it. God, no, not now.
No. But so that's where...
it's like me saying, so how Aboriginal are you?
Yeah. But it's still said. That's what I mean as well.
It is so rude.
It is still said. Yeah, and Aboriginal people are the only one really that has ever asked those questions.
Right.
Like, how often have you ever heard anyone say how
Lebanese are you?
Yeah, or how Australian are you, or how certain things like that. Like, people are like, it's like some of these questions are never said to other people. They're just accepted. Like, someone said I'm a Chinese person, you say, oh, cool.
So how Chinese are you? So is your mum Chinese or your dad Chinese? Like, you don't look Chinese. You don't have a Chinese nose. You don't have Chinese hair or Chinese slanty eyes. Right.
All of those things that come from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what, if you are genuinely, so you mentioned that you didn't say anything about your father.
Yeah.
So is your father not Aboriginal?
My father's not Aboriginal.
Okay. No. So if we were to, it's none of my business to have that conversation. And obviously it would just be something that I would learn about you over time, being someone that we spend time with, just like you don't know about my parents and what they are or where they're from.
Yeah.
But is there a correct way or a way to have that conversation?
I think it's, for me, I always refer to the intention behind, like everything in life. Whatever that intention is, if it's coming from a pure place, then I think any question can ever be asked.
Yeah.
Because the other person...
they're not meaning to hurt or be
But you can
offensive.
feel it.
Yeah.
You can feel that.
Yeah.
You can straight away feel if someone's asked you a question...
And it's a dig.
And it's come out and you're just gone, hang on, this question's come from somewhere.
Yeah.
Or if the question has come from... Oh, this person's just asked me a question.
Yeah.
And that's how I always say. Yeah. And I remember a previous colleague, when I changed roles, she said, you were always so warm and welcoming when I came with with a question from the right intention. She added that into her thing because she knew that's sort of how I worked as well.
Yeah.
I have the time for anyone in those places. So if I was to introduce myself, give my acknowledgement and introduce myself, I'd now say all those things about I'm a Wirrum man from the I'm a Wirrum Gibbar from the Binjang clan of the Wiradjuri Nation, which means basically I'm an Aboriginal man from Wellington, New South Wales. Also an Irish, a German, a Scottish, and I acknowledge all of those cultures within me as well. So I will say that to a more professional setting or something like that.
Yeah.
Obviously not when I shake someone's hand.
Yep.
But being here in Australia, because I have asked people once again who have not come from that genuine place of asking the questions, will say, well, how come you don't acknowledge your Scottish heritage? So my dad's surname's Scottish, so they're, I guess, if we were to give them one label, would be Scottish, even though once again they're a mixer, you know, a number of different cultures, but more all European and, you know, UK and all that. I say, well, I live in Australia. This is where I'm from. This is where I was born. This is where I'm connected to. If I lived in Scotland, I was born there, but I also Aboriginal heritage, I probably would not be connecting with it over there because that is not the culture of that place.
Yeah, you would say I'm Scottish from this clan, but I'm also Aboriginal.
Yeah, exactly right. And then they go, well, how come you don't? And I go, well, I don't know anything about that because I don't live there and I don't know anyone there and I don't know blah, blah, blah. So that's sort of where it comes from.
You probably know far more about who you are than the person asking, though, because I did my ancestry DNA and I am like 33% Irish, 33% Scottish, and then 33% a mix of all different kinds of different things. Germanic and Welsh and all the different things. But if I hadn't have done my ancestry DNA, like I can only go by stories that I've heard, which is, your ancestors came from England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, and that's about as much as I can give you. You know far more about who you are than I do, and I've got no business asking you and putting judgment on you when I don't even know who I am most of the time. So what other things have I said that, because obviously, like I, mentioned to you before we teed up this chat that my goal is to be able to be a part of the solution and be a part of the doing and the action of. So I want to make sure that my influence, and any time that I'm talking, that I am using the right words, because people will look to me as a leader in my community to learn.
Well, I think it's around, you've definitely asked like questions. So that's always the first place to start. And what I share through, like, when I've educating people, like through work in different places, is around not relying necessarily on just the Aboriginal people to give all of the answers on the first occasion. It's about educating ourselves and then asking for guidance and support along that journey. So we don't want to make Google stories and use Google to create stories, or use Google to as the knower of everything. But at the same time, obviously, internet and Google has so many wonderful things as well. So using that as the guidance, and then coming to people who you respect as Aboriginal people, who are you connected to as an Aboriginal person, to cross-reference sort of that type of information. So
it's exactly what I did.
Yeah. So that's where.
How do I address someone? What questions don't they like to be asked, and why? And what questions do they want to be asked? What things shouldn't you ask, and all those things? But that's what I would do with anyone. Well, that's unfortunately, that's the thing. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, this is a completely different situation, really. Like, doing it with you to doing it with a lot of other people is because they aren't all these things. They don't think this way. They just say whatever they're thinking rather than thinking about how that is being said or whatnot, like that whole, mindfulness around understanding and feeling and being present and all those sorts of things. Like, not everyone does that. So that's where I guess my comments are more coming from, not necessarily around you saying these as a flippant of course
comment, but it's more around just those being mindful of moving forward. Like, for me personally, there's no question that anyone can never ask me. If it's coming from a place where they're not going to then follow it up by a judgment or whatnot after that. I'm happy to sit and talk about absolutely anything. Like, I've literally been on TV and spoken about like some of the darkest things that have ever happened to me in my life on ABC, a live worldwide broadcast. Like, I'm a very open person in those regards. But at the same time, I think we need to understand that as Aboriginal people, we're the most interviewed, documented, researched group of people in basically the world.
Right.
And so often we've got probably the most reports ever written about us around health, justice, education in the world. And those reports and those interviews and those questions and those conversations, unfortunately, are always repeated. And like we're talking about that word sorry from the start, they don't change. The narrative doesn't necessarily change, or it changes at the pace of a snail. So that's where generally, I guess, a lot of that angst around Aboriginal community is sort of saying, don't come and ask us a question unless you've actually thought about the question before you come.
And is the question already been asked that you can go and watch YouTube videos and have your question answered, or are you just asking the question to make you sound interested? Are you doing it for your own ego, or are you doing it for a reason that's greater?
Yeah, exactly. So that's where, I guess, like, there's a number of things that we need to understand in regards to that, and there's hundreds of years of history behind where a lot of this is coming from.
And some people are probably more easily offended than others, would you say?
Yeah, once again, we need to understand, we need to be mindful of that individual person's own history in regards to whatever that conversation topic might be about. For my own personal family, my grandfather was murdered by guards in jail. So direct black custody death. So, a question or a comment around that at that particular time could be more sensitive to me than it could be to another person as well. So there's so much things through history in regards to Aboriginal people that have happened that we need to, just be mindful of that. I might be going on a little bit more of a sort of rantish, but the whole thing about these things aren't happening now. A lot of things are still happening now. They're just not as overt as they're were
trying to
in
hide
the past.
Them as well.
Yeah, and to say that wasn't me that did that to you, it's like not you directly.
Yep.
But you, in regards to your bloodline, in regards to your own rights, your everything that you take for granted.
Like what you don't do.
Yeah, what you don't do. Yeah, so that's also plays a big part in regards to a lot of Aboriginal people and myself.
So when I said about how I don't think that, like, I feel a very strong calling to not be here to have the conversations about sorry and to always just, have that conversation, but more have conversations about the future. Is there, like, I'm just wondering, I'm curious if there's like a spiritual... if there's ever been in time for Indigenous communities where spirit and all of the powers that be up there, the sky, has ever said that there will be a time where it changes? Like, is it written? Has Indigenous people seen a time when they are one with everybody else they know they are, but is it a time when my bloodline sees that as that?
A story that I was once told is that, so we know the boomerang.
Yep.
And the boomerang comes back.
Yep.
If thrown properly. It's difficult.
Probably wouldn't come back for me.
No, it's hard. But, and as we talked about rejuvenation, we've talked about treating the earth with the respect it needs to then, in turn look after us. So and even the day and the night, so the sun coming up and the stars. So everything there is about repeating and coming back.
Cycle. Yeah,
cycle. So that is some story that I've been told around the belief of Aboriginal people. So even when the tall white ships come to the land, and there was some story that has been told around how long are these people here for? What have they come for? When are they going? And there was a belief, that's why Aboriginal people were so welcoming and thinking, okay, well, this is another person like we are.
Yep.
They look different, but the same. So we treat them with respect, and eventually they will be leaving, and everything will come back to how it was.
Else, and it didn't work that way.
It hasn't worked that way. So I can't necessarily answer the question with a yes or a no, but that was, I guess, the understanding and the intent from the Aboriginal perspective.
Right.
But in my own personal opinion, this is my personal opinion, is that unfortunately, you know, Western civilization was already so corrupted in their own minds and their own spirits that probably no.
Probably no. Yeah. Well,
but
maybe
more community like yourself and, you know, the people that will be listening to this, believing, connecting and understanding, and then off the back of that being what we call, you know, especially in regards to NAIDOC week and all the significant days and times, and hopefully just continued being that ally, showing respect, understanding, welcoming, it'll eventually change. There's always hope.
Well, I think it's like my personal belief is that everybody else will wake up, and that's divine time. And it maybe those stories will get passed down through generations of the divine time will arrive when everyone will come back to its oneness, as opposed to there being a left and a right or a bad or a good. The oneness will come back into a whole again. But there'll always be light and shade. There'll always be night and day. There'll always be dark and light. It's just what is the next one that we have to. And I guess one of the last things that I want to talk to you about was what we're all facing together is destruction of our environment with the floods and the fires and all of that kind of stuff. What is the Indigenous sort of chatter, I guess, or conversation around what's happening and why that's happening?
I wouldn't necessarily hear of a why. I guess more just the understanding once again is if we look at documented history, that once again cycles, things happen. You know, where we are right now, your house, this was all underwater, and Aboriginal people would have lived up on the mountains. So to understand that fire has a purpose, water, floods have a purpose. Everything has that purpose in regards to Aboriginal belief. So, in the way that we live now and the destruction that everything can cause, it's, you know, obviously quite horrible and whatnot. But in the Aboriginal sense, if we would have been looking at it and thinking about it from our, you know, thousands of years ago and our dreaming, these things were normal, and we would have been prepared for them as prepared, obviously, as we could be, and there would have been things in place about, well, we know at this time of the year
this happens,
so
we're going to go to
Wellington. Be there. Exactly.
We're going to go hang out with our Wellington brothers.
Exactly right. And the fire thing, like we had part of control over these sorts of things, because once again we were in touch with all of this.
You wouldn't have let it get that bad.
We wouldn't have. If a flood came too, we would have been like the tide. High tide, low
tells
tide.
You things.
Like, the moon, we know, obviously, So that's the understanding of it.
Yep. Which is such a... Which, you know, again, I share almost exactly the same kind of view of it. There really is only destruction of man-made. Mother Nature is doing what she needs to do to clear and to cleanse in order to rejuvenate and restore and renew. And it's part of the life cycle. The destruction is of man-made. So you can't go against Mother Nature and what she's here to do. You know, ultimately there's that reigning force that we are all not under, but all a part of, and must at some point go through the process of being a part of that. And so if we're going to go and we're going to build our houses and build our infrastructure and roads and bridges and whatever in places and high density in places where Mother Nature hasn't cleansed for a long time or is seeing that there is an imbalance, then we better expect that there's going to be some kind of righting of that, and it's going to appear to be destruction because it's destruction of the things that we've created as man-made. But there is no destruction. It's all just cleansing and restoring and righting. Right. And so that's another thing too, you know, like those conversations, there are so many people out there who you cannot have those conversations with because they'll turn around and say, so all these people that were killed in the bushfire and the floods and the animals and everything, you're so insensitive. It's like, well,
I'm not.
It's just a different, it's a different perspective, and there's a calmness about this belief.
Yeah.
It's not, there's no, does that make sense? Like the calmness?
Everything was a process. Everything, like we said, happened for the reason.
Centered.
So,
It's like you don't ever feel like anything's wrong.
No, exactly right. Yeah, that's the good way to put it. Yeah.
And it's faith too. Is faith a thing in Indigenous?
Well, I think it's.
Does it have a word or like is it a concept? Or is it just what it is?
Yeah, I think it's just that. Yeah. It's just the understanding of what we call it law. So LORE.
Yep.
That's how we call it. That's what it got named. Obviously, it was whatever it was before that as well.
Yeah.
For each Aboriginal group, but that basically means all is like and
you're just a part of it, and it's a given.
Yeah. Like I think what we do too often now is try to put too much meaning to things and to title to things where that was just part of the process of living and never I doubt from understanding the Aboriginal people we didn't necessarily question that, there was always potentially one person that questioned it, but things weren't questioned. They just, we did this today, we did that tomorrow, this happens then, this happens here. This, it
just rolls.
That's just the way we live, know. And it's similar to what we do now. I guess so many people are in that 9 to 5, and that's just the way that they live. They don't question that, do they?
Well, I don't. These days, I think they are.
Yeah. Well, hopefully more and more are. That's a lot of the Aboriginal understandings, connection, spirit is all around. Everything has its purpose. Everything has its process. The fires, the floods, the changing of the seasons and the world. We've seen it come and go, and we take the benefit from it, and we obviously try not to think about the negative from it either. So,
and but realise that it is the balance.
Once this goes, then something else comes for us.
Yeah, and you honour each part of that, the death and the rebirth and all of that kind of stuff. It's all beautiful. Like, who says death is supposed to be bad? It's not. It's just part of the cycle.
Part of the cycle.
Do you believe in reincarnation?
We as Aboriginal people, there's an understanding of. I might not necessarily have heard the word reincarnation, but about the spirit living on through what that particular person's connection was. So if that person was maybe given the skin name to an animal, to a tree, to a waterway, to a place, to a mountain, to a star, to something like that, there is belief around that their spirit and that person has lived on through something like that.
Right. So like if it's a magpie, then the magpie appears, that is the spirit of my great-grandmother.
It could be,
exactly.
Right.
Okay. I get that.
Yeah. And generally that they're there for a particular reason.
A message.
That Aboriginal group of people would then know what that means. Yeah. They're telling you something, they're showing you something, such and such.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. And then a great grandchild or nephew or great whatever could also be that connection to that as well. So that could be their spirit.
Them.
Yeah.
So you see it in them.
And all that sort of stuff.
Like their laugh or their humour or their how they carry themselves or their stubbornness or some sort of character trait.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been told of a story of these two different birds, and they actually, when a friend of mine was talking about someone that they were having a a disagreement with, and then these two birds are actually having a disagreement in the background of him when he's telling his story.
That's cool.
And it made him think, that animal's, they're me.
Yeah.
That's my spirit bird there.
I love that there's that moment.
Made him realise and go, okay, I need to stop this conversation.
It's like a mirror.
What's going on
it's
there.
showing me. That is so cool. I love that. I giggle at people that have just got this awareness of present moment, and I love it. I strive so hard to be present because it's everywhere. It's showing you constantly, and people are just living in the past or the future, and they can't see what's right here, right now, being shown to us. I'm thinking of so many more things. Are you okay to keep going for one more thing?
Yeah.
A few years ago, a friend of mine bought a block of land out at Kilcare.
Yep.
And Kilcare apparently is quite a significant area.
We've got lots on the Central Coast.
Yeah. And she's actually Romani Gypsy.
Sorry?
Romani Gypsy.
Okay.
Like from Ireland and Scotland.
Yep.
Not the good gypsies.
Not the good gypsies. Okay. Yep.
A lot of cursing and spells and hexes and all those kinds of things. They're very deeply rooted into dark magic.
Okay.
She's not, but that's her bloodline.
Yep.
Anyway, and she's very respectful of the Indigenous community and environment.
Yeah.
And the block of land that she's got is high up on this mountain, and it is beautiful, and they've been so respectful with getting guidance about where they should build their property, and it's not more than they need. It's her and her husband have done so much to be able to give so much respect to the land and the fact that they're living on it. But she was given guidance through her learnings that there was spirits hanging around, and she doesn't have the know-how to be able to connect with them or understand them, but she wanted to make sure that she was honouring them, and she just didn't know what to do, so she contacted me. And like, I've known her for a while, so I just said, sure, I don't know what's going to happen, but okay, cool. And this was not long after I'd had that conversation with the lady up in the NT. And so I was feeling all kind of like connected, probably a little bit too much privilege going on there, but still feeling like, well, I felt I was called as well. I thought it wasn't a coincidence because that's never happened before. So I thought, okay, this is just, I got to keep your ego about you and realize that what's happening right now is you're just being a conduit or a messenger, or you're being used, like I was being used to do whatever it is that they needed to do. And that's how I work anyway. I don't see me being the magic. I just see me being the way that it's delivered and expressed. So I went out there and I knew to take offerings, so I made sure that I did some research and did the best I could with my intention to go out and take some offerings. And then I just went and I just sat. I did a walk around the whole perimeter of the land. I noticed where I was receiving messages like feathers and birds and lizards and just gushes of wind, and where I could hear water, and I was trying to pay attention to it all. I don't know what it all means, but I was trying to just be a conduit for whatever messages needed to be passed. What did come up was that there was one area that they were planning to build a shed, and I just got this feeling from here, but also like deeper as well, that it was like a real guttural no. And it was like, this is out of bounds. Like you can have this. We see that you're coming with pure heart and intent, and that you're going to work with us and respect us, but this, no. And so I went back and I told them, and they changed their entire plan, and they built the shed elsewhere. And I was guided to where they should build it. And it was guided to me by a specific tree and a rock. And we found the tree and the rock on the land, and they built their shed in the direction that they needed to. And they ended up blocking off with like tree logs that had fallen on their property, and they just created this space around it. And so that's just the no-go zone. And I don't know any more about it. I just know that's what I received, and that's what they went with. And then she, not long after that, when they finished all of their buildings, she went to a market, and there was an Indigenous artist there who had drawn in pencil a leader of the clan that occupied, I think it was Pretty Beach, around that area, and it's this big pencil profile picture, and she's just got it like, the place is so small that there's the wall space is tiny because it's so small, but she's just got it on their biggest wall. It takes up the entire wall from end to end, and it's like in the center of the home. And she's like, I saw it and I just knew that he was meant to come and be here. So is it okay that I did what I did? Is it okay that she's doing what she's doing? Like, neither of us really know what the hell we're doing, but we're trying really hard to listen and to observe and to incorporate.
I think all of that is wonderful, and a lot more steps in the right direction to really respecting, like you're saying, you know, the land that we're on, to hear and see and feel and everything like that. I guess, you know, to take it further, she could definitely ask for some local Aboriginal people to come there and
Which she did in the end.
Oh, okay, yeah, and go through what process they feel they need to go through. Like, I don't have the experience, understanding of how to do something there.
Yep.
I'd sort of know like what someone might need to do, but I haven't been taught.
Yep.
Around like smoking and stuff like that. But yeah, of course, like and from me getting to know you more, it seems like that you've got some acceptance through Aboriginal people to at least be able to feel, understand, you know, hear and, you know, respectfully do all of that processing to be able to, you know, make some sense of what's happening. So I just think that's, just first off, just lovely that someone's been so thoughtful in that way.
And if more people could do that.
Yeah, because, exactly, because so often everything's sort of built and done without any thought of anyone else. So, or what that land is that they're on might mean or entail. Like, you know, I've heard the stories of up in, what's it called? Up in like Mangrove, Summersby Way, Glenworth Valley.
Yep.
That being like a massacre site up there, and a whole adventure park's built on the top of it. And you know, I'd like to obviously believe and that they had no obvious idea. But what steps did they take to
have an idea?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and without obviously putting anything on anyone, but that's like everyone and everywhere all the time, you know. So yeah, to hear that type of story is obviously lovely, and I'm sure all the community, without speaking for all the community, would be very, very grateful to be able to hear that happening.
Yeah, well, I think like it's like a calling, and I can't not do it. But I also think that you know, like if more people who are not Indigenous, if they could just start, like something practical that you could do is just to start to pay attention to how the earth is speaking to you. Go out in your backyard and your front yard and pay attention to the nature and where does the sun rise on your property, where does it set? Like I know exactly where it sets. And you know, I always had a really poor sense of direction as a kid, like even as an early adult, like I never knew which way was facing where. I'd be like, oh yeah, I want to go to Erina, and it would be over there when that's the ocean. I'd be like, okay, well, where's Erina? But when I moved here, like north of Oka was the first place that I felt like I belonged, and this is the 29th house that I've lived in, and the 29th probably country that I've lived in. And it's the first place where I felt like my roots have landed, and I know my sense of direction since I've lived here, and I know it because of where the sun rises and the sun sets, and where the moon rises and the moon sets. And it's like it's always been there, but I needed to get into the right I needed to be in the right direction to get my point of reference. It's like, okay, no, this is my true north. that tree out the front is sacred to me in a way that I cannot, like it's the one where you can just see the early green leaves that are sort of silvery green leaves up close, but it is this tree that goes like that, and there is something about that tree that I feel like it is a part of me, like I've never been connected to a tree before. And a lot of people will laugh in a sense because I am like the least earthy person I meet when it comes to spirituality. Like I'm just not as connected to the earth. I'm more connected to spirit that lives in the earth. Does that make sense? And so the spirit that lives in that tree and I are like, we speak. And we've been wanting to extend that deck out and put a garage underneath. And the people that came out to talk about doing that extension, they just said, well, that tree's going to have to go. And I said, well, I guess we're not doing the work then because that tree's not going. I will not negotiate for that tree because it's almost like it's me. Like I will mourn that tree. Someone cut the branch off the side and didn't ask. And I lost it. It was just like this anger inside of me and I'm not an angry person. It takes a lot for me to get angry. But I was just like angry that the permission and like it's got to be the smallest little spark of what it must feel like.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah. But that's exactly what I was talking about before in regards to reincarnation.
Yeah. Yeah, you just chopped my granddad's arm off.
Yeah. So that type of significance, like, I don't know obviously about that Kilcare property, and I know some places on the coast, like in particular, you can come to mountains meant to be a ceremonial place, and there's buildings up there and things up there. There's lots of other places, men's and women's business of through different state forests like Arimba and a number of different places, and there's journey lines from here all the way out to Wollombi and Cessnock and stuff like that. So many significant places here, but then also as talking about before, how being basically sort of the second settlement site, and places like Patonga being massacre sites and certain things like that. So here on the coast in particular, on top of what ceremonies would have been taking place for thousands of years, and where all the spirits are and the connections are to all the different bits of land and mother that are here, then in the more modern terms around burial sites or other sort of significant marriage and journey sites, it'd be really interesting. Like I don't have that connection like what you're talking about to feel and understand, but I have the knowledge of that at the same time. So that would be there would be so many sort of places like that on the coast, and it'd be really interesting, like to even for someone like yourself to feel that and to I don't know, something to document that, like if that was something that I don't know, that just is something that I'm thinking about. But that'd be cool, because we get told of like this site's that site's that, like through like my connections and community. But what it actually feels like, because I've had a friend, a local elder, who is one of the more connected sort of men on the coast. Talk about he was just walking through the bush and trying to find different things. Like that's basically how we do it, without having anything documented down. And he got bit by a snake 3 times when he was on this one part of the state forest, which he then realised was a women's site. And while he was there, he got bit 3 times by a snake.
Wow.
Which means obviously leave.
Get off.
There was no secrets.
No.
You know what I mean? Like that was the thing though. It wasn't like, and we dealt with things that were not right. If that was, things that happened as well. We still had, as much as we weren't violent people, we definitely had consequences for not completely following our law and what we believed in. So and you found a place that was part of that, part of that story and part of that process. So that's really, really lovely.
And I think like if anyone can just even hear that and realize like how beautiful Aboriginality. Is that the way to
Aboriginality.
describe it?
Yeah.
And the law.
Yeah.
And just the genuine intention and heart and spirit. It's such a beautiful thing to experience if you just let yourself experience it.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
It is all about loving, sharing, giving, supporting, like all of those wonderful words. That's what been like
because I am you and you are me. Why would I want to hurt you?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. That's exactly right. Like that was never ever, That's exactly right.
Well, I think that's an excellent way to finish because clearly we could probably just keep talking and maybe we need to. Maybe we need to have more of these chats.
Yeah, oh, definitely happy to.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And you're going to come on the podcast as well, which will be awesome.
Yeah, always very happy to share and support in any way I can. It's exactly what you just we finished there. It's just sort of saying the way that I go get my education from the people that I know and try to spend as much time as I can from the men that I know and gain my knowledge, but at the same time I think when we share we educate ourselves at the same time as well. Not only educate other people but and help other people, but sharing helps me and helps us when we share as well, so I'm always happy to do that.
And one last thing, is there any way that I can support you or my membership or my community can support you other than what we're doing?
Are you talking about individually? Or?
Individually? No. I don't know. Do you want me to?
I'm starting my own business. No, I think just as Aboriginal people, once again, it's just around, that word I think is being said a lot is about being an ally to Aboriginal people, and that's supporting. It's not about speaking for. It's not about doing for. It's about supporting and starting those conversations, supporting empowerment, the word support. So walking alongside and helping create those spaces with the privilege that many of us have that a lot of Aboriginal people don't have. So it's just around supporting. That's how we be ally, and that's probably a good message for now in NAIDOC week.
I love that.
And and I'm here to do that too. I'm always here for conversations and to share, and if anyone wanted to reach out, I'm always happy for that as well.
Well, I'll put your details down as well. And I think, just from me to you, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And my goal as a person is to incorporate spirit, and so that's all the spirit. So your word is support, my word is incorporate. So I will continue to support and incorporate everything that I can, and you can consider me and my company and my family as an ally.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Jason. Thanks. Oh my God, that went for 2 hours.